Before Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency took a chainsaw to the United States government, there was Javier Milei. Seen by many as an inspiration for Musk's drastic cuts, Argentina's chainsaw-wielding president and self-declared anarcho-capitalist was elected in December 2023. Milei campaigned on promises to blow up the central bank and take a chainsaw to Argentina's bloated bureaucracy.
Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera.
As Milei approaches the midpoint of his term, his record is disputed. While some economic indicators have rebounded, sweeping cuts to public spending have led to mass layoffs and sparked a wave of resistance. Pensioners, unions and students have flooded the streets in widespread protest. My guest tonight is Diana Mondino. An economist by trade, she was the architect of Milei's foreign policy until she was abruptly ousted as foreign minister last October. I'm Mehdi Hassan, and tonight I'll go head-to-head with Diana Mondino. I'll challenge her on Milei's incendiary rhetoric and whether he's mentally fit to lead her country. I'll also push her on the toll of Milei's extreme economic agenda. Has he delivered an economic miracle or just more pain? Tonight, I will also be joined by three experts. Matias Venengo, a professor of economics at Bucknell University and former senior research manager at the Central Bank of Argentina. Martina Rodriguez, the co-founder of Ni Una Menos UK and a member of the Argentina Solidarity Campaign. And Maxwell Marlowe, Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute in London. Diana Mondino, thank you so much for coming all the way to take part in head-to-head today. There is much to discuss. You served as foreign minister under President Javier Milei. This is a man who the critics would say gutted social programs, publicly insulted foreign leaders, his allies, called journalists the prostitutes of politicians. You served under him until last October, when he rather unceremoniously fired you and called you and your colleagues in the foreign ministry traitors, parasites, arrogant imbeciles. And yet you still support this rather strange man. Why?
Because that's an incomplete list. There are many things that he did on the right way, on very, very good things, and particularly he's trying to turn Argentina around. So my job was, whenever he would say something not so nice about somebody else, I make sure that the other guy hadn't said something uglier before.
Okay.
So it's not that Milei would start those things. And let's fix the concept there. Countries are there forever, leaders come and go. And the relationship with the countries, within countries, and with other countries is far more important than what one person can decide today or tomorrow. And that's what I was trying to do. And may I say, all other foreign affairs ministers were trying to do too.
You said that often when he said something rude about someone else had said something ruder to him first.
Usually.
So what did you say to him to make him call you an imbecile and a parasite?
He didn't call me an imbecile and parasite.
He did.
Oh, I forgot that.
He said in an interview, he said, I believe, referring to the foreign ministry that you were part of after he fired you, I'll tell you what, I straight up believe they are traitors to the country. They live in a parasitic life. They are fatally arrogant imbeciles.
I don't think that really referred to people in general, to people in
Well, the
per se.
interviewer said, are you referring to people at the foreign ministry? Yes.
Yes, and he said, let me finish my word. Come on, you look at my husband. Let me finish. And he would say about the ministry, because there are rules and there are laws and there are things that come along. And one of the things that he's trying to do is change a lot of things in the government. It is true that some of the people that have been working in Argentina now and in the past in the Foreign Affairs Ministry believe that they own the only truth, but so does the president and so does everybody else everywhere.
Let's talk about the policies. He's trying to change the country.
Yes.
The big program that you and him and the government put into place was the economic program. It's been called chainsaw economics by some. It first exacerbated Argentina's recession, pushed up poverty massively. And now, yes, 18 months in, the government you were part of has brought down inflation, to be fair. Growth is looking good this year. But I wonder at what cost? Unemployment is up, the value of pensions are down, public spending has been gutted, people have been protesting in the streets. The inflation rate still remains one of the highest in the world. How is this some historic achievement, as Milei likes to claim, or the best country in the world, as you once predicted it would be to business leaders?
One of the things that you have to remember is where we were before and what would have happened. Of course, it's imagination. We don't know what really would have happened if the things kept on going that way. There's absolutely no nonsense in saying you cannot spend more than what you already have. Everybody in this audience cannot spend more than what you have, and you cannot keep on doing it for 8 decades. So what he has done is stop that. Now, whoever was receiving that money out of the sky, of course, is not happy. And what the government was trying to do is to split it in an even way or putting the pain where it belongs. And that's not easy to get done. And of course, every single stabilization program in the world has been coming with a recession. There's less money to spend. If there's less money to spend, someone will sell less things. And not selling enough brings in a recession. But there's no other way of bringing down inflation.
The reason it's called chainsaw economics is because your president proudly talks about shutting down government departments, cutting state budgets.
That's another thing.
Even Elon Musk now regrets taking that chainsaw from Javier Milei's hand at the CPAC conference in the US. You know what he said? He said, I shouldn't have done it because it, quote, lacked empathy. Isn't that the problem, that you and Milei look like you don't care about the poorest people in Argentina who are suffering on your watch? I believe you were the richest member of Javier Milei's cabinet.
Definitely
You've not had to. The public disclosures suggest that you were the wealthiest member of the cabinet. The Buenos Aires Times said that you were the wealthiest member with a...
Well, maybe the one that declared, but I was not the wealthiest. But I wish I was. I wish I were. I'm not going to
the Buenos Aires Times said you were the wealthiest. Let's say you were the second wealthiest. You're worth many millions of dollars. You've not had to worry about financial hardship. So it's easy for you to say we shouldn't spend more, we should make these cuts, but ordinary Argentines are suffering.
Let me put it the other way around. Let me put it the other way around.
Okay.
There's a lot of people suffering right now. They were suffering even more before this government took office. And if you don't fix it, there will be no...
That's not true. You pushed up the suffering last year. Poverty went over 50% in the first 6 months of last year.
Where'd you get that figure from?
It's called INDEC. It's the National Statistics Agency
of
Argentina.
I know INDEC. I know, and at least something that can be said in favor of this government is that they are not tweaking the numbers of the previous government. Listen, there are things that are working the way we would want to, which is bringing down the total expenditure by fixing ministries, shutting down any areas. There's a lot of people that have lost their jobs, private and public sector.
You know this, Diana, right? Unemployment is the highest level it's been since 2021. That is not a successful government. But let's be honest, this is not an economic project. This is an ideological project. Milei is a libertarian. You are all on that side of the spectrum that thinks government is bad. In fact, Milei says, and I quote, calling someone who pays taxes a taxpayer is like a rapist calling the woman he rapes a girlfriend. He also said the state is a pedophile in a kindergarten with the children chained up and bathed in Vaseline. I think I have to take a shower after reading those quotes out loud. How did you work for this guy?
I strongly believe that the only way Argentina can come out of the doldrums that we're in is not spending more than what you can, selling more things to everybody, including the rest of the world. And there's a very
particular... How do you justify that attitude that I just read out to you? You just dodged
but I'm not going to marry him. I mean, I don't have to like him.
But do you share that view of the state?
Of course, no.
You don't think the state is a rapist or a pedophile, do you?
The Argentine government, I'm not going to say it's the most corrupt in the world because there's a long list that governments are corrupt, but definitely there's a lot of corruption in Argentina. Argentina has had taxes just on the agricultural sector equivalent to 2 Marshall Plans. Where's that money? Yeah. Where are the roads? Where are the schools? Okay. Where are the hospitals?
I'm not here to defend previous governments.
Okay, but that's the corruption.
I do want to get to your views. You dodged my question about libertarianism and Milei's views.
No, I believe in liberal governments. I'm not.
And you do agree with Milei on a lot of stuff, because, for example, he promoted this idea of an organ market, of buying and selling human body parts. You call that idea fantastic. How is it fantastic or even ethical to bring money and markets into organ donation?
Ask the Nobel Award people that got that idea.
Which Nobel Prize winner was that?
Alvin Roth.
Alvin Roth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we reached out to Alvin Roth before this show, and he said his scheme has nothing to do with what Milei is proposing. He doesn't think that at all.
Maybe the phrase, it's either misquoted, I don't know the phrase. Definitely, I don't know the phrase.
He proposed a global kidney exchange where people could find...
It is working in Argentina. We do have a law.
Milei wants people to sell organs, and you know very well that just ends up with poor people having to sell their organs to rich people. Why would you do that?
We have a long-standing law that allows to exchange organs from one person. You need a kidney transport. Maybe your wife cannot or will not give you a kidney.
But not for money, Diana. You should not be selling organs. You know very well that leads to poor people and poor countries.
I'm only defending the law that we already have in Argentina. And actually, we have a law called Ley Justina that allows for people to exchange organs in a very different way, meaning that it's not...
So you disagree with Milei on organ sales?
Come on, you have to, not selling, it's allowing...
But Milei wants to sell organs. He says, I would repeal the ban on organ sales. You have your daughter about to die, she needs to pay for an operation, someone wants to buy your kidney, you could sell it to them. Do you support that, yes or no?
I have been through 2 or 3 different very personal situations where people had to go through a kidney transplant. One of them was a heart transplant, that was Justina, whose dad was my student, and they prepared the law, and there's no money.
I'm going to have to ask you to answer the question.
There's no money, as far as I know, included into that. If someone is doing something behind the lines, I am not aware of it.
Do you agree with Milei saying you should be able to sell your kidney, yes or no?
Me, I don't agree with that.
Okay, we got there in the end. Let's go to our panel of experts who are...
because you're twisting the argument.
I'm not... I read out his words. How am I twisting? I'll read it. Do you want me to read it one more time?
No, it's going to get boring. Come on.
All right.
There are all these people and I don't want to...
Let's go to our panel. We've got a couple of economists on our panel tonight. Matthias Venengo is a professor of economics at Bucknell University. He previously served as senior research manager at the Central Bank of Argentina. Matthias, you heard Diana say, what else could we do? Money can't fall out from the skies. You can't spend more than you receive. So what would you say as a critic of Milei's economic policies?
So, first of all, there is an issue that I think it's an important confusion. When she says you cannot spend more than you have, nobody here can do that, because we don't have reserves in dollars in the central bank, and what we have to pay is the external debt. And so what we have is that exports are not sufficient to pay for that because a lot of wealthy people put their money outside of Argentina. She might not be the richest person in the cabinet, but maybe, you might have some money outside of Argentina. So what do you do? What Milei did, how did Milei hold the economy? The fiscal adjustments and all of those terrible things that you just told us about, and they are there, so you cannot deny those things. All of those things come from a fiscal adjustment that it's unsustainable because he will have to transfer money to the states and so on, the provinces, and he has to pay the bills eventually, and he's not paying several bills. But those just gave pain. The stabilization is because he held the exchange rate. And he managed to do that because now he has the IMF, and holding the exchange rate holds the price of imported goods. So you can actually stabilize the economy without a lot of pain.
Had you come into office in December 2023 instead of Milei and Diana Mondino, what would you have made your priority in government, economic? What would you have done? Inheriting this recession, 200% inflation, what would you have done?
Significant transfers in pesos to the people at the bottom. And you need to, I would say, something that maybe she agrees, higher rates of interest to preclude capital flight and renegotiation of the debt. So holding the exchange rate to the extent that's possible. That would have allowed the stabilization of the currency, and it would have allowed less pain at the bottom.
Maxwell Marlowe is also here from the Adam Smith Institute here in London. Maxwell, unemployment has climbed to a 4-year high in Argentina, 7.9%. There are still nearly 18 million people living in poverty. How bad does it need to get before someone like yourself, who I believe is a supporter of the Milei government's economic programs, says, actually, this is costing too much in terms of human suffering?
I think it's a difficult one. I think what Milei's been doing is, as the Bloomberg coverage is labelled shock therapy. We've seen that previously. The Thatcher government very famously did it after years of what was essentially a terrible couple of decades for the UK. And I think, the human suffering aspect is very difficult in this aspect The problem is Milei is so committed to the ideas of economic libertarianism that I think he does flush it out of the window.
Are you optimistic about Argentina?
I am optimistic. Reading the IMF report where they have, permitted $20 billion of credit to flow into Buenos Aires, they are very confident, and we'll probably see 2029, by their estimates, GDP per capita rising to about $36,000 per person.
I do want to move on to women's rights, but just briefly, the question I asked Maxwell, can I ask you, does a point come when there's so much human suffering, people rummaging through dumpsters, pensioners saying, I have to choose between eating and paying for my medicines, when you say, actually, we've got to stop this?
Of course, that can happen. Again, I'm not in government.
Not there yet. No, you're not there yet.
I hope not. I sincerely hope not. And the answer to prevent that is opening up the economy, having trade agreements, exporting more, even through lowering taxes or whatever other thing, and so that you can have more resources. If you don't have more resources, there's no way for ending poverty or any other ailments that Argentina has. Again, the only way to grow is that you have more people able to work, either because their education or children are well nourished.
Well,
that's something far more
going
important.
up, so that's not going well for you. Let me ask you about women's rights in Argentina.
Sure.
In January of this year, Milei vowed to remove the concept of femicide from the country's penal code, despite the fact that in 2024 there was a femicide in Argentina every 33 hours. There have been 103 victims of femicide this year in Argentina. He also dissolved the Ministry of Women, Gender and Diversity and made significant cuts to support for domestic violence victims. How are you okay with that, Diana, as an Argentine woman?
When you see how those things work, I mean, the number, the name, of course I agree with it. When the name of this femicide, etc. But when you look at what is being considered as a femicide in Argentina and the way it works, then you start having a lot of problems. Now, if a lady, for example, is run over by a bus, is it a femicide?
No.
Well, there you go.
But 103 people have been killed on what the government says
That's
is femicide.
it. And there's a lot of, there should be, I hope there is, a lot of protection for those people.
There is. It came from the Ministry of Women, Gender and Diversity that helped 1.5 million people dealing with gender violence. Milei shut it down.
Yes, there were 1,200 people apparently taking a salary there, not much more efficient as far as I know. And whatever there's
But why shut down a ministry that's devoted to helping victims of domestic violence?
You're transferring the responsibility somewhere else. Actually, if you consider that's not the only ministry that was shut down. There were 22 ministers and now we're 8 or 9. So responsibilities are being transferred to the Ministry of Justice. The way that you change the name is not necessarily...
So you don't think Milei has a problem with supporting victims of domestic violence?
I hope not.
I'm just wondering, since we began this discussion, you say I disagree, I'm not in the government, but you will not say one word of criticism against Javier Milei. This is a man who said to a female journalist, I'll take out a 9mm gun and put it to your head. He said to another female journalist, she's a donkey. Did he call you names as well?
No, never.
Never. So just other women.
Probably younger and nicer. You're going to say that later?
I didn't say a word about younger and nicer. I'm just wondering why you're defending a misogynist.
Because my mom taught me what my grandmother taught her, that you have to discuss ideas and not people.
How is it an idea to call a female journalist a donkey? What idea was he expressing?
No, what is an idea is that you have to, you're very facetious, that's why he's such a great journalist.
It's not facetious at all.
No, that's your...
Could I say you're being facetious by quoting some, family anecdote? Let's bring in our third expert on the panel who's been waiting patiently. Martina Rodriguez is a member of the Argentine Solidarity Campaign and the Feminist Assembly of Latin Americans. She's a founder of Ni Una Menos UK. Martina, I believe you came back from Argentina not long ago. What is the situation when it comes to women's rights, to protection of women in Argentina under the Milei government right now, in your opinion?
I mean, it's appalling. And I think there is a programmatic anti-feminist agenda, which the president himself boasts about. He went on to say that he's proudly anti-feminist and that feminism has ruined Western civilization and the economy and progress. Then the government shuts down the Ministry of Women, Genders. And not only that, as Mary said, then we have the government cutting 90% of the attention to women who are suffering gender-based violence, and the helpline is being cut 50%. There's a sort of mix of economics with cultural wars happening at the same time. So the ideology of the president is having an impact in their material lives. And I just want to say that 60% of poor people are women. So when Milei says that, feminism has nothing to do with the economy, we do have a lot to say about the economy.
Yeah, Martina mentions the culture war. I just want to throw in extra.
Yes.
She mentioned culture war. This is
Yes.
a culture war, right? I mean, you yourself have been part of that. She mentioned feminism.
Milei
I believe you
is
in the past
very strong.
You in the past have described feminism as a satanic cult.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Well, maybe I will start growing corns.
I mean, January 2023, it's on Twitter. You can go check. We did.
Okay, let me go back. One thing is how you call things, whether we do have a minister whose responsibility has been transferred to the Ministry of Justice. We have abortion law, probably one of the earliest countries. We have voting rights for Argentina for the last, 60, 70 years.
Do you want to specifically respond to what Martina said? I understand the record.
The kind of things that we are worried about now, talking about women's rights, I would really like to see what is it that is not being addressed right now. The fact that we have...
Let Martina come in briefly, because we're over.
Yeah,
just briefly, what is not being addressed right now?
There's many things that are not being addressed. But an example, as I just said, they cut the helpline. It's been cut 50%. We're not doing anything because the support for women that suffer gender-based violence...
I gave you a specific example.
It's not that I don't want to answer. I will not know the details. But if you have to look into what the level of occupation of that line was, whether it's too much, too little, I don't know.
I do want to ask you about Milei's foreign policy, which seems to be based around blowing up Argentina's traditional alliances. When he was campaigning for president, he called Brazilian President Lula an angry communist. He labeled Colombia's President Gustavo Petro a murderous terrorist. He fired you for voting against the US embargo on Cuba, which is a historic Argentine Latin American position. He said his foreign policy goal is to align with the US and Israel. So far tonight, you've defended his economic policies, his gender policies. Surely,
I tried to explain.
Surely you don't defend his foreign policy too, do you?
Actually, it was an integral part of the foreign policy, so I should be talking about that in detail and hopefully defend what we have done. The fact that he called someone names, I can vouch and I can be sure, and you can really find information about that we were okay with Brazil in a number of issues. The really relevant issues like immigration, education, trade, etc. We are very much in agreement, even though our leaders don't like each other. Now, my job was to make sure that the relationship in the private sector and in the rest of the public sector kept on working fine, and I think we succeeded reasonably well in maintaining those kind of relationships.
Last question before I go to the break. A lot of people look at Milei and they see Netanyahu and Orban and Putin and Trump and Meloni, and they see this kind of global authoritarian alliance, people who aren't really interested in liberal democracy. What's your response to people who say that?
That trade is the solution to all those problems. It's the answer for growth. And it's the answer for education and health. Otherwise, you can have no resources and no possibilities of exchange with anybody. That's the only place where you can work. And what you have to consider, okay, there are trade-offs all the time. I have to consider this or the other. We have to choose between two evils. Yep. Which one will help me export more? Which one will help me be friendlier to another country? How do I decide on education policies if I cannot have students from another country? That is the reason why you may have a cultural war on other stuff, you may have decisions on other things, but if you don't have that kind of agreement, that is not going to be growth.
Diana Mondino, we're going to have to take a break right now. We've covered a lot in this part with our panel and with you. In part 2 of Head to Head, we'll hear from our very patient audience here in London's Conway Hall. We'll also be talking about President Milei's very particular style of leadership. Don't go away. Welcome back to Head to Head on Al Jazeera English. My guest today is Diana Mondino, who served as foreign minister under President Javier Milei of Argentina for the first year of his government. Diana, you and I have talked a little bit about foreign policy, women's rights, the economy, all big issues. But the biggest issue, surely, is Mr. Milei himself. He is an interesting character. I know you told me in part 1 you and your mother and your grandmother don't want to talk about individuals, but we really do. We really, really do need to talk about President Milei's state of mind. I have to ask, Milei in his speeches, Diana, often thanks his advisors, Conan, Murray, Milton, Robert, and Lucas, except these aren't actual people, they are his dogs. In fact, they are his dead dog, plus his dead dog's clones, who he apparently seeks counsel from on matters of government policy. When you were foreign minister, did he take more advice from you or his dogs?
Actually, since I was working on foreign trade agreements, no one gave me any kind of advice because we had to work with Mercosur, and that's how we finally finalized the Mercosur European Union agreement, the EFTA agreement. They both have already in the works. UAE, we are in the work. Maybe someday we will get with the United Kingdom. Those are the things that nobody would give any kind of advice or because it's something from Mercosur, and all four foreign affairs ministers were working together, plus Bolivia sometimes, which is the fifth. So I wouldn't know about that. He would not give me any kind of advice.
But you know about this Milei Council of Advisors.
I mean,
one biography of Milei is called El Loco, the Madman, and it says that Milei believes it was a telepathic conversation with his late dog Conan, who's dead and he cloned the other dogs off of, that relayed God's message for him to become president of Argentina, and that he still communicates with the dead dog Conan through a mystic, which, by the way, Milei was asked twice about in 2 separate media interviews, refused to deny that he does this. You've been defending this man's policies tonight, a man you used to work for. He does sound a lot like, to the rest of us, a madman.
I've seen the dogs twice. I didn't count them because they're really big, and I'm not really like doggy person. So, but I've seen them.
But his state of mind, this is not a well man.
Let me put it the other way around.
Okay.
Let's say he's, as you're saying, let's say everything that everybody's saying is true, and there are much uglier things that are being said about him. Let's say all that is true. Would that change the policies? Would that change what he's trying to envision? Why would people that had voted for him and his idea and still support him, and may or may not, in October, vote even more for this idea?
You don't think mental fitness matters when it comes to a leader of a country?
It is extremely relevant, and I would beg you to mention a leader, one of the big leaders in the world right now, who would not have some sort of, let's say, narcissism.
No, you're right about that, but I could turn it around and say, can you name a world leader who consults his dogs on policy issues?
Maybe they have a cat.
I mean, let's be serious. Carlos Rodriguez was an advisor to the Milei campaign.
Carlos Rodriguez was my boss for 25 years.
Okay, then, so let's talk about Carlos Rodriguez.
We're very good friends.
A serious figure, friend of yours. This is what he says after Milei took office. He quit the Council of Economic Advisors. He said the mental imbalance of Milei became much more evident. Insults, bizarre facial gestures, arbitrary firings, unnecessary fights, an army of trolls, dogs in heaven. Does this sound like a mentally stable leader to you? Because Carlos Rodriguez said, I can't work with this guy.
Let's say that everything is true. If it were true.
Why do hypotheticals? I'm asking your actual view. You worked with him. People here want to hear your
I
view.
work with both of them.
Okay.
With Milei and Carlos
Who's
Rodriguez.
right, Carlos Rodriguez or Javier Milei?
I have to say that Carlos is always right.
Okay. So he has got a mental imbalance that's in
No,
evidence.
I cannot say that. I would like
Why? Why can't you say that? Are you afraid of Milei?
Of course not.
So why can't you say it?
Why would I be afraid of anybody? I'm not in government anymore.
You're avoiding very simple questions. I'm
But
telling
you're not
that he
asking
consulted with dogs. Milei hasn't denied this. You're not denying it. You're just saying, well, other leaders are narcissists.
You're not asking the relevant questions.
I mean, I'll decide what's relevant. It's my show.
Exactly, it's your show, and I have the right to answer whether I like it or not.
Okay, fair point. Last question before I go back to our panel. He said a lot of crazy things that you as foreign minister probably had to defend or shrug your shoulders for. Over the years, Milei has repeatedly attacked the late Pope Francis. He equated him with evil for his support for social justice. He accused him of sympathizing with, quote, murderous communists. He called the late Pope a piece of shit. You're Catholic. Do you believe that Pope Francis was, quote, an imbecile or, quote, the representative of evil on earth, to quote your former boss?
I'm using some Benito medal. Is that a good answer?
No. Do you agree with Milei?
No.
Why would he call the Pope the representative of evil on earth? What's wrong with this man?
Which man?
Milei. I like Pope Francis.
Okay, me too. The question here...
So you like Pope Francis. When you heard him say that, what did you think? Did you not get angry?
I was very happy that I would not have to talk to Mr. Parolin explaining what we were doing. Parolin is the Foreign Affairs Minister of the Vatican.
Not my question. Why did he call him that, and what was your reaction?
Ask him why he called him. I don't agree with that.
Were you upset when he said it?
I think for the Catholic population in Argentina, which is the majority, even though we are an interdenominational country with lots of religions, I think it's kind of offensive. Having said that,
Finally, we got something of an answer out there. I'm gonna take that as a win and go to our panel of experts who are waiting patiently to come in.
you will not let me finish. Okay?
Matthias Venengo, I asked you the question 4 times, is a professor of economics at Bucknell University, previously served as senior research manager at the Central Bank of Argentina. Matthias, we've been talking about Milei's fitness for office, his obsession with cloning dogs, attacks on the Pope, etc. Is this a sane person? And to take Diana's point, does it matter if Argentina's doing fine and the people like him?
So I have a friend that says, I talk to my dog too, but I don't expect a reply. So I don't think he's fit. I think it's very clear that he's unstable. There are many other stories that speak to the fact that he's an unstable person. I think that part of the problems that Argentina have are that people have to come around and try to make things work because he is very unstable. He, for example, I think more into the economic area, he called China and all communist countries, the devil, and I'll never trade with them. But last summer, it was China and the swaps that allowed Argentina to maintain the exchange rate and stabilize.
I negotiated that swap.
Fair enough, but the point is, you had to go around because he's unstable, and he fired you for something that made little sense, that was discussed here before. So he is unstable. He pushes away people that may have sane solutions to problems, and I think it is a problem to have somebody unstable and unfit to be in office.
Maxwell Marlowe is here for the Adam Smith Institute in London. Maxwell, I believe you've actually spoken to Milei. Is he crazy, or is he just saying crazy stuff to get attention, Boris Johnson style?
I will caveat that by saying it was a very short conversation. We were inviting him to London to speak because we want to kind of see a loco in person. Okay. The reason he doesn't brush his hair is because he believes the invisible hand, Adam Smith's invisible hand, brushes it for him. He says some pretty mad stuff. Adam Smith himself was pretty mad. He famously put his socks in his teapot and tried to serve himself tea. There are mad, insane people out there, and we can look back at the Enlightenment where, Milei gets a lot of his ideas from. Some pretty mad people there too. I think he takes inspiration from those sorts of people. But I think it speaks wider to the kind of new age of politics we're in, where world leaders are able to say some pretty mad stuff and to try and get away with it. And I think a lot of it is to do with attention. Do I think he's unstable? Yes, I think he is unstable. But if he is delivering for Argentina, which I think he is, I think the economy, is getting back on course and it is stabilising. And his popularity rate, by the way, is doing quite well as well. I think it's okay. Is it okay for your job, being the head of the diplomatic service? Not so much. It's difficult for you. But I think for everyone else, it's good headlines and it's good popularity ratings for him.
On that note, it's not all just ha 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 funny, he says crazy things, his hair's not combed.
No,
he also says a lot of extreme bigoted things about minority groups, about LGBTQ Argentines. And it's not just Milei. Diana, in November 2023, you stated that you support marriage equality in theory.
I do.
But then you said it was akin to having lice. You said, quote, if you prefer not to...
You too, Brutus.
You said, quote, if you prefer not to bathe and be full of lice, and it is your choice, that's it. Don't complain later if there's someone who doesn't like that you have lice. Isn't that the kind of language that's not helpful?
In a 3-minute long phrase where we put a lot of examples, and the last one was the lice. So whoever did this, of putting together the homosexual thing and the other, and the person I was talking to, he's actually married to another gentleman, and I know him and we're good friends. So that is not...
You were not referring to gay couples?
We were talking about people being responsible for the decisions.
Okay. But you were criticized, this heavily for this quote.
I was heavily criticized for that. I was heavily criticized for something about retired people, which I never said. And so there are things that people will twist because of politics, or they will just trim the phrase. But what you have to do is understand. And the whole is, let's say 1 person, 3 persons in cabinet do or do not like dogs or LGBT people. That does not change the society in Argentina. We're a multicultural society. Okay. Sorry, it's important. Argentina has not had any kind of religious issues ever.
But it does have a lot of anti-LGBTQ violence. A lot of gay people have been attacked. I do want to bring in Martina, who's here, Rodriguez, from the member of the Argentina Solidarity Campaign and the Feminist Assembly of Latin Americans. Martina, in part 1, we spoke about women's rights in Argentina. But LGBTQ rights haven't fared so well either under the Milei presidency. He has made some explicitly bigoted remarks about gay people, trans people, etc. Again, where do you see the situation now for Argentina when it comes to minority groups? Gay people, but not just gay people, minorities across the board.
I think minorities across the board, you can't say that hate speech doesn't have an impact in the lives of people. And Milei has said that gays are pedophiles, and that is a hate speech. And hate speech has a complete correlation with Milei's authoritarian repression that bashes pensioners every Wednesday and that nearly killed a journalist who was taking photos in a pensioners' protest. This is a package of, you say that his speech doesn't matter, what he says doesn't matter, but he's persecuting personally journalists who oppose his policies. Julia Mengolini has been targeted by him. He tweeted 90 times in 2 days, and he sent his troll militia to share an AI video of her having sex with her brother. And it was fake, by the way, of course. And now she and a lot of journalists are suing him because his policies are authoritarian. And sorry, one last thing. It's really funny that it's the party of freedom, that you only have the freedom to hate minorities, but not to criticize the government.
Before I go to the audience, Maxwell, I do want to ask you one quick question. As someone who's from the Adam Smith Institute, supports free markets, is there a contradiction right now in the world where a lot of the leaders who are being praised on free markets, whether it's a Donald Trump or a Javier Milei or a Viktor Orban, also politically are quite repressive, as Martina was just laying out? They're very anti-free press, etc.
I wouldn't call Donald Trump pro-free trade. I've been on the airwaves quite a lot criticising his tariffs, for example, and he's not great there. I mean, I've got a lapel pin on which Milei wears, actually. It's from Students for Liberty, which is an organisation I was at when I was at university. And it's a big question we ask ourselves, which is, yes, he's correct in his, economic policy, but, where's his understanding of, for example, free speech or, trying to get a First Amendment through, for example, for Argentina? It's a big question for us. But I think to answer your question directly, Megdi, it's a very difficult time, for free markets, especially in the UK. We had Liz Truss, for example, trying to push through. Dealing with that political realism is a big question that a lot of us libertarians have had to deal with.
Let's go to our audience here at London's Conway Hall, who've been waiting very patiently to come in. Gentleman in the green shirt, can we get a microphone to him? Yep.
My question for Diana is, how can you still identify with a political party and a government that has sympathized with the perpetrators of crimes against humanity in the last dictatorship in Argentina, has cut funding for the organizations that have documented the human rights abuses and has attacked the human rights organizations that have defended the victims?
Who says I'm not a member of the party?
You've defended the vice president, who I think you're referring to, correct me if I'm wrong. The vice president of Argentina has made comments that have been very controversial about Videla. I think she went to visit the late dictator in prison, and you spoke out in her defense.
We have very different views with Villarroel about Malvinas, for example. Why do we have to agree on 100% of everything? I'm from Cordoba, where the dictatorship acted in a very different way than in other countries, and I do not agree with neither what happened to bring in the terrorism, nor what happened to stop terrorism. Neither of that. None of those things should have happened.
Do you, like Milei, deny that 30,000 people were killed in the dictatorship?
He denied, yes, and lots of people denied that there's been 30,000 people. Actually, the only document that we have says that the only document that we have is 9,000 people, 30,000, and people were, the friends and family of the people that were killed got paid. If some people did not go and collect the money, it does not mean that they didn't exist. But it's very hard to come up with that number. And it's on the record, someone that says. But we also have a law in Argentina that says that you cannot deny that number. So my views are not relevant. It says a law, which I may or may not agree with, but we have to abide with it.
Martina's keen to come in briefly, Martina.
But the reason that we don't have the official numbers is because the dictatorship and the military coup won't share the numbers, and that's why we don't have them. If they did, please share all the information. If they share the information,
anymore.
exactly.
Destroyed them.
But
it's so that's it's a false comparison. I think
this is a firing squad. I was in school when that happened. You weren't even born when that happened.
I left the country when that happened.
Exactly.
My parents.
Exactly. And so those things were terrible in a society that was torn apart, that's still today being torn apart through that. And the only thing we can do is look into the future and say, punish those who made something stupid, something that far more worse than being stupid, that killed people in a most horrible way. Punish those people.
Is it helpful for the vice president to call it a human rights scam?
That's her view.
I
don't agree with her view. Why should I agree? She's on the record.
It, so that's what I'm asking. You have defended it in the past.
I have defended the role that any vice president in Argentina has.
Let's go back to the audience. There's someone at the back. Gentleman there in the black T-shirt in the back half of the hall.
There's been a lot of talk about Milei's economic policies and how competent he is, and belief from some of the panelists that he's got sound economic policies. Recently, he tweeted about a crypto coin, which a lot of people invested in, which turned out to be a pump and dump scam and lost investors millions of dollars. And he's recently been cleared by his anti-corruption chief, which he had himself appointed.
Convenient.
How can we really say that this guy has sound economic policies and we can trust him when it seems like corruption is endemic to his government?
I can add to that question whether you can see he's an economic genius if he doesn't understand something as clever as that. But my whole point, and I'm trying to convey that Argentina has to, the whole country needs to understand that we are in a different way, whether Milei dies tomorrow, hopefully not, or whoever comes into government, we have set up certain rules that will be guiding the problem. The Mercosur agreement with the EU has 3 different parts.
Trade. You love talking about the Mercosur agreement
yes, because it's going to change Argentina.
But the question was about the pump and dump scheme from Javier Milei earlier this year, where people, I think $250 million vanished. Diana, you brought up corruption. I didn't at the start of this show.
Exactly.
Is he a corrupt president?
I hope not. And if he is, he will have to go to jail one day.
Well, there are lots of lawsuits being put against him, both in Argentina and in New York courts.
And if it's true...
What do you think, Diana? I'd love to hear your view.
I will tell you my view. And later, please, let me tell people that Mercosur agreement with the EU will change Argentina.
Great.
Because you will have... There's 3
we're going to play this game.
No, because the justice system...
Do you believe that Javier Milei should have tweeted a link to a cryptocurrency?
No, he should not have linked done that.
Great. Why do you think he did it?
I think someone told him about that. He thought it was a good idea.
Somebody made money out of this. $250 million vanished.
Exactly. So there's 2 possibilities. He's either not very smart or he was some sort of corrupt. You choose. I don't know.
I think I can speak for the audience when I say, wow, that is the first time tonight Diana Mondino says Milei is either corrupt or stupid.
No.
That's what you said. You heard her say it. I heard you say it.
No.
If you're watching on YouTube, roll back.
No, you're good, and I know that will happen in Argentina in a few weeks, that people will cut that little piece of Diana Mondino says that, and they will stop, same as with the lies thing, etc.
You said it. You said he's either corrupt or stupid. You choose.
You can decide on that.
But you only gave me 2 choices, corrupt or stupid.
I can give you the 2 choices, yes.
There wasn't a 3rd choice.
Am I always the right person to know about that? What I can tell you, if you want to export wine to Switzerland, you will have lower taxes. That thing I don't know.
Okay. But he's either corrupt or stupid. That was the choice you gave me.
Okay. Again, sorry guys, when you hear that about little fragment going on in the Twitter, let me say that I tried to add something into it.
Okay. Let's go back to the audience. I promised this lady here would get a question, get a microphone to her.
It's nice and close to your mouth.
As an American college student, I witnessed police arrest classmates simply for peacefully protesting our university's ties to Israel. And I'm concerned for the global crackdown on free expression and assembly. How does Argentina justify its own response to pro-Palestine protests?
As far as I know, there have been no difficulties with that in Argentina, neither arrests, not very strong protests. There have been protests, of course, but I don't think there were any arrests in Argentina. It must have been only in America.
What about the broader point about free expression? There have been crackdowns on protests in Argentina. That's undeniable.
Oh, yes. No, there have been.
How did you feel about that in government? Milei came in very strong. Libertarian, except a few protests.
Very strong, and we cannot say the date, but a few days ago, there's been a new decree talking about whether social networks will be policed or not, and what subjects, etc. And so people say, oh, they're going to crack down on free expression, and people say, no, it's for terrorism. I don't know. It has just gone through the total legal process. Now, if that happens in Argentina, it would be extremely terrible. I was going to say regrettable, but it's far worse than that. If Argentina is drifting towards authoritarianism because of the personality of the president or because of any other reason, that would be regrettable. Okay. What I'm trying to say is that it's not yet there, though a lot of people see that as almost a certainty.
Okay, so let's go to another lady. Let's go to the woman here at the front.
Now, you are aware that President Milei's decision to appoint 2 justices to the Supreme Court in Argentina by decree was seriously criticized by the UN Special Rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers. Is this a threat to the rule of law, the circumventing of the Constitution and processes established in law to appoint judges?
I'll try to make it a short answer, but it's difficult. That has happened more than once in Argentina. Unfortunately, it was not gone through Congress. No.
Precisely, that precise recent attempt to appoint judges by decree, which was criticized, correct? Or do you agree with the Special Rapporteur?
I'm not a lawyer. Everybody objected to that. So with my little scant knowledge, I agree with disagreeing that it should never have happened. Congress did not let it go through. And the fact that we still have separation of powers, so that the Congress said no way. So that would show that still today, Argentina institutions work.
Diana, I appreciate that Congress did its job and blocked it. That's not the point, though. The point is, why is Milei doing it? Isn't that authoritarian mindset?
Forever,
because he has an authoritarian mindset.
And because it happened with the Kirchner, it happened with Menem, it happened before. That should never, ever happen again.
Gentleman there, I promised the last word too.
My question is, how do you expect people to believe you after you don't recognize or you don't remember the president calling you parasitic, unforgivable, or all the other horrible stuff that he said to you? Thank you.
What I can say, if my work was focused on one particular thing, that I hope will keep Argentina on a steady growth path. The economic policy, hopefully, will appease inflation. The social policy, hopefully, will help in health and education, particularly for children. Eventually, hopefully, retirement payments will be higher. If I have been called names, I don't have any grudges. I want Argentina to be a better world. As you mentioned, I have a reasonable net worth, not the wealthiest one. I have 2 grandchildren. I want them to grow in Argentina. I want them to be happy children, and they do not have to live, as many people, as Matthias mentioned, had to live in the past in Argentina. If all we're trying to do is look for the perfect guy who combs his hair rather than the crazy thing he does, who will wear a nice tie rather than the one he does, and we're waiting for everything to be perfect, it will not happen. If you're waiting for something like that to be your spouse, it will not happen. No one is perfect. Argentina has an opportunity. Let's not squander it.
On that note, Diana Mondino, thank you so much for coming all the way here from Argentina to do this head-to-head in London. Thank you to our audience in London's Conway Hall. Thank you to our panel of experts for their contributions. And thank you to you all at home for watching Head-to-Head on Al Jazeera English. We'll be back soon.
Si querés sumarte a la batalla cultural contra las nefastas ideas de Javier Milei, dale like, suscríbete y deja tu opinión en la caja de comentarios.